Dale Harimoto, and I've come to Peekaboo, Idaho to find out about a sport that's really catching on.
I'm Dr. Michael Breen. And Dale, I'll tell you about the injuries associated with that sport and how to avoid them.
I'm Sandy Newton. Are you dying for some great entertainment this weekend? Well, we'll tell you all about Bruce Willis's new film and more in just a few minutes.
Hi, I'm Terry Millerick. What did you have for breakfast? Stick around. Maybe I'll show you what I had for mine.
And I'm Bob Goen. We'll have all those stories, plus the latest overnight news, weather, sports, and everything you need to make this a great weekend. Good morning, everybody. Welcome once again to Great Weekend. I'm Bob Goen.
And I'm Dale Harimoto. On this morning's show, Sandy Newton brings us a little bit of Bruce Willis, whose new movie has just debuted.
Yeah, there's enough to go around. And speaking of debuts, some new and exotic fruits and vegetables are making their debuts lately in our supermarkets, and our consumer reporter Paula McClure tells us what they are and how you can use them. And Dale, I think Paula even brought us a little sample today, too.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
We'll dive in.
Well, also ahead, Jack Perkins has a question. Why have political conventions when we know the outcome? But first, speaking of the conventions, let's go by satellite to the news desk where Stan Turner has news about the major Democratic players working out their differences. Stan?
Right, we have that. Good morning, Dale. Good morning, everyone. It looks like Michael Dukakis and Jesse Jackson are headed for a truce on this weekend before that convention. Their top aides are now going to meet in Atlanta, Georgia tonight. They hope to iron out any differences the two presidential candidates may still have. Now, unlike these two cardboard cutouts on the convention floor in Atlanta, all has not been smiles between the two men. Preparations are continuing throughout the weekend at the site of the Democratic Convention, but there have been fears that things would not go smoothly between Jackson and Dukakis. Jackson was miffed by the way Dukakis announced his choice of Lloyd Bentsen as his running mate. Jackson says he harbors no acrimony, no hostility. Right now, he is heading to Atlanta aboard a bus caravan, and he will arrive there later today. Dukakis will arrive on Sunday, and the convention itself begins on Monday. In the meantime, Republican candidate George Bush will spend his weekend fishing in Wyoming. And across the nation, a convention of another sort. The Aryan Nation will be holding its yearly convention this weekend at its headquarters in Hayden Lake, Idaho. They will not be alone, however. On hand all weekend, law enforcement officers taking pictures. The neo-Nazis reportedly will be discussing ways to clean up their image. In Hemp Hill, Texas, 3 white police officers were found not guilty on charges they violated the civil rights of a black jail inmate. They were charged when the man died of head injuries after being in their custody. On Monday, a new trial begins. Then the 3 men will face murder charges. The National Guard is on patrol this weekend in Council Bluffs, Iowa. This after a tornado ripped through the town, leaving it vulnerable to looters. Now, nearby Omaha, Nebraska was also hit by the twister. Massive thunderstorms and powerful winds up to 92 miles per hour hit both cities yesterday. Most of the 60,000 residents in Council Bluffs were left without power, and the crews are working now to fix that. More than 100 homes were damaged, sidewalks were torn up, and 40 people were injured. A hotel fire in Paris early this morning has killed 4 tourists. Officials there are saying that Americans, West German, British, and Belgian tourists were among the victims. Several people were injured. The fire destroyed the Hotel St. Vincent de Paul in northern Paris. Well, our farmers continue to wilt in this summer's drought, but some of them in Iowa are getting some relief, not from the weather, but from other farmers. 40,000 bales of hay arrived in Columbus to help feed livestock. That hay comes from farmers in Virginia and the Carolinas. Ohio farmers had bailed them out 2 summers ago in a similar drought. The hay was a welcome sight.
Oh, it'll help greatly. It'll just help me to increase, probably keep my cows at least another 3 weeks to a month.
It got to the point where we almost had to get rid of the horses and just close this place down altogether. And this really was a lifesaver, this hay that come in. Really saved everything.
Ohio has already been declared a natural disaster area because of that drought. In a macabre twist, the drought has claimed another victim, this victim in Cleveland, Ohio. 8-year-old Joseph Krog had climbed into a freezer apparently to get a popsicle. The lid closed down on him and latched. His father found him 4 hours later. Doctors got the boy's heart to beat but were unable to revive him completely. He died 21 hours later. The father of that baby born on board an airplane says he wants custody of his little girl. He and his wife visited their daughter in the hospital yesterday. They have named the baby Alyssa Francis. Now, her mother had the baby in the lavatory of the plane that was flying to San Francisco. She concealed the birth and the pregnancy from her husband. The husband and his lawyer will go to court Monday to fight for custody of the girl. The county has custody right now of the child. The mother is charged with child endangerment for leaving the baby in that restroom. The father says he had noticed his wife was getting heavier and asked her if she was pregnant, but she had denied that. That's the news right now. Bob, back to you.
All right, Stan, thanks a lot. We'll check in with you a little bit later on in the hour. In the meantime, our entertainment editor, Sandy Newton, goes ahead and makes our day with Dirty Harry. Next.
If you're a businessman or woman with the brains, drive, and desire to run a growing company, Inc., the magazine for growing companies, invites you to call now for a free copy of its Guide to Small Business Success. Here's a special report packed with the kind of hard-nosed, how-to business savvy you find in every issue of Inc. That's INC, period. And the Guide to Small Business Success is yours free just for subscribing to Inc. at the money-saving trial rate of $18 for 1 full year. Then each month, you'll profit from Inc.'s special brand of hands-on management advice, facts, news, and ideas that quickly get down to business, plus insights into the business news straight from the men and women who make it news. So call today for 12 monthly issues of Inc. and Inc.'s Guide to Small Business Success free. That's 800-228-3800. What's more, as a special bonus, you'll get this handsome Inc. soft briefcase free with your paid order. Inc. magazine pays for the call. Toll free 800-228-3800.
Introducing Lee Press-On Nails, the French manicure. Beautiful, affordable, easy to apply as regular Lee Press-On Nails, and with 4 extra nails, 24 in all for a perfectly beautiful fit. Lee Press-On Nails, the French manicure.
Lee! Miss Lee! Press-on nails for teens!
Miss Lee Press-On Nails for smaller hands. Easy to put on as regular Lee Press-On Nails with 4 extra nails. 24 in all for a more perfectly beautiful fit.
Fun at your fingertips! Miss Lee Press-on nails! Bikini Bear, go for it. Get smooth skin to show for it.
For lovely legs and underarms, Bikini Bear Lotion Depilatory. Pleasantly scented in use. And with our unique applicator remover for quicker, more thorough hair removal.
Bikini Bear!
Introducing Lee Sculptured Nails. Long-lasting like salon nails, but affordable because you do them at home. Just glue, brush, shape. If you can polish your nails, you can enjoy Lee Sculptured Nails like nothing you've ever used before.
This has been a week of record heat in some areas of the country, some drought relief in others, and even tornadoes, as Stan Turner reported. So, how's the weekend shaping up? Well, Dave Dahl is standing by to tell us. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Dale. We did have some extremely bumpy weather right through the midsection of the country, and that bumpy weather is going to turn to some more heavy thunderstorms a little later on tonight. We're expecting to see that activity continue right from the central part of the U.S. As you can see, the heavier thunderstorms right now around Goodland, Kansas. From there, they stretch up to about Dubuque, Iowa, all the way up into Madison, Wisconsin. They had some heavy rain last night as well up through Park Falls, but that activity will be the focus for more heavy thunderstorms late this afternoon. Down in the southeast, clear to partly cloudy skies, going to mean steamy heat. And out to the west, lots of sunshine. They're going to bask in that sunshine out in the west as well. As far as those temperatures go, because of that sun, we're going to once again have record highs in the south and southeast. They had over 24 record highs yesterday. From the middle part of the plain states all the way down into the southeast, 100s will again be topped from the middle part of the Mississippi Valley all the way up through the Ohio Valley. The cooler weather is way up in the Pacific Northwest with highs in the 70s all the way from Washington and Oregon, and the 80s down across the middle part of the plain states. As far as that outlook for today, we're going to see scattered showers and thunderstorms once again, very hot and humid down along the Gulf Coast all the way up through the southeast into South and North Carolina. And then up in the northeast, severe weather will stretch all the way from New England right on down through the southern part of the Great Lakes and all the way into the middle part of the Mississippi Valley. The focus once again will be especially up there in the northern part of Missouri and southern Iowa. Now let's look at the national weather. How about the weather in your area? Orlando, mostly sunny, 92. Las Vegas, sunny skies, 109 today. Chicago, some more thunderstorms, but cooler, 94 for a high there. Bob, coming up in the next half hour, we're going to take a look at the jet stream and see how that plays in our Sunday weather.
Okay, we'll look forward to that forecast, Dave, a little bit later on. But now it's time for the entertainment forecast. And our entertainment editor, Sandy Newton, is calling for smiles, laughs, and thrills.
Here in Los Angeles, we have some fine comedy clubs that can get your weekend off to a laughing start. And clubs like the Groundlings Comedy Theater, where Pee Wee Herman and others got their start, are just waiting to entertain you. So why not tickle your funny bone at a comedy club near you soon? But if a new movie's what you're looking for, here's what's coming your way. And speaking of Pee Wee Herman, he's got a new movie coming your way that I'll tell you all about next week called Big Top Pee Wee.
Guess what it's about? Hurry up! Don't move! Come on, you guys, hurry up!
You forgot your fortune cookie.
What?
Squinty Clint is back, handsome as ever at 57 in a new Dirty Harry movie called The Deadpool. This time he's investigating the seemingly coincidental murders of a rock star, a film critic, and a talk show host. All trails lead to a betting list which forms the Deadpool, and Harry's on the list. Now, I usually don't mind Dirty Harry movies, but this one went really overboard. Too much violence and gore. Come on, Clint, you can do better than this.
I promise I will never even think about going up in a tall building again. God, please don't let me die.
Bruce Willis is moonlighting all right, this time in a movie called Die Hard. It's a high-suspense, high-rise cat-and-mouse game. I loved it. It's really going to keep you on the edge of your seat. Tension at its summertime best. And Bruce really proves he can make the leap from the little to the big screen. Recently, I was able to talk to Bruce, and he had this to say.
Die Hard was a good script that we made better as we went along. We made the bad guys a lot smarter when we started shooting the film. We made the crime much more intelligent. I think everyone in this film did a fantastic job. The audiences that have seen it so far have just gone crazy about it. They really... You can't hear half the film because people are yelling and cheering and saying, yeah.
Bambi! If you have kids, or you're a kid at heart, you'll be happy to hear that Bambi's bounding back your way. This enduring, endearing deer is a must-see and is just as lovely and touching as you remember. Well, that's a look at the new movies, and here's a look at the current Groundling troupe where you just might catch a rising star. You know, a lot of comedy clubs have an open mic night where anybody can get up and tell a joke. Okay, did you hear the one about what's new in home entertainment? Well, no kidding. Here's a look.
I was like, hello, Mr. Cosby, and you hear, I would like to talk to you about some of the things that you do in your show.
If you're in the mood for some very raw comedy, Eddie Murphy's stand-up movie called Raw is out this weekend. It's definitely adult material for late-night weekend viewing, and it was the most successful concert film ever made.
Flying filth in front of people. And I never said no filth, flying filth.
Well, that's a look at what's new in home entertainment. I hope your weekend is full of laughs like Mia's Big Apology, which the Groundlings are rehearsing. I don't want to miss the punchline, so back to you in the studio.
Okay, Sandy, bring us some jokes next week when you join us in the studio once again. Meanwhile, still plenty to do in your neighborhood over the next couple of days, so why don't we take a look at some of those activities in your area.
Emmylou Harris will sing away your cares in San Juan Capistrano, California next weekend at the Coach House, and will be moving on to entertain in Sacramento and St. Paul soon. Debbie Gibson will be in Memphis, Tennessee tonight and will perform in Houston, Texas next weekend. Restless Heart will catch the beat in St. Clairsville, Ohio tonight and then appear at the fairgrounds in Montgomery City, Missouri next weekend.
Why does it have to be?
Now, here's an event for you that is steeped in tradition. It's the Chicago to Mackinac Island Yacht Race. It's the 81st running of that race. Kicks off next Saturday as a fleet of more than 300 boats are going to set sail on Lake Michigan at noon. And Dale, I know you spent some time on the water recently yourself.
Well, I was actually in the water. I was learning a sport that really is more like an art form with a vocabulary all its own.
These small ones are betas. These are pale morning duns.
This man is talking about flies, the bait of the fly fishermen. As these men donned their waders to go fishing, we wondered, what is the lure of fly fishing? Of course, there's the solitude and peace of being in this kind of setting, but why not fish with a hook and a worm? Why fly fishing?
It's kind of a fantasy land most of the time.
Overall, I think it's just fun to get out here and try and fool a fish.
It's called match the hatch. It's the essence of fly fishing. It's the delicate science of determining what the fish is eating at that moment and fooling them with an artfully crafted look-alike.
Blue-tail fly, dragonfly, black cricket, grasshopper.
For our first foray into fly fishing, we chose a stream in Peekaboo, Idaho, on ranch land just outside of Sun Valley.
Fish are looking upstream for food because their food is all aquatic.
Our guide and teacher was Mike Rydell. He's the publisher of Sun Valley magazine and knows the area very well. He's also a fly fisherman himself.
As you'll see, just moving it back and forth. Let me get over here on the other side of you. Okay. Moving back and forth, the rod bends a little bit, and that kicks the line out. So all you have to do is move it from about 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock to 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and then finally let one of them fall, and bam, it flies on the water, and you're catching fish. Here you go.
There's not a lead weight on the end of the line. It's the weight of the line used in fly fishing that casts the fly into the water.
That's it. See that rock submerged over there? Go a little above it.
Oh, all right.
And try that. See that fish chewing on it?
Yes. Oh, this is exciting. Ah, he must be huge.
Yeah.
Look.
Let's see, what have we got there?
It's a
moss fish.
Moss fish followed by a...
Sometimes all you may catch is moss, and sometimes...
Oh, I got one!
Yeah!
What do I do now?
Okay, just pull in with this. Take this line and pull in a little bit. There you go. Bring him in. Now lift the rod tip up.
Like this?
Yeah.
And then what?
Okay,
just keep...
swing him down below you, just like a derrick.
Look, he's a pretty good size.
That's darn right. That's a rainbow.
The beauty of fly fishing is what's called catch and release.
Most streams, lakes, have a finite number of fish. And if you take one and I take one and everybody else takes one, soon there are no more and there is no fly fishing, no more fishing at all.
After you catch the fish, you perform a kind of fish CPR and let it go.
Couldn't have done it without you. Thanks. That's really a thrill.
Lots
I
of
loved
fun.
it.
Another perfect day in Idaho.
Right.
You really caught that fish your first time out?
Yeah,
That's
well,
a beauty.
I mean, there's a little bit of beginner's luck going, but the most important thing is I had a good guide, and my advice to everyone is, if you want to make sure of having a really good experience, go with a guide. He told me where to put the line. He could see the fish when I couldn't see it, and if I didn't have him, I wouldn't have caught a thing.
Is it expensive? I've never done it.
Well, you can rent gear at first, but if you want to buy it, you can spend anywhere from, say, about $400 into the thousands. So, it's you can get as elaborate as you want.
Did you really let the fish go?
Yeah, well, it was such a beauty. I felt good about letting it go. But I did get a fish for you.
Yeah. How did you know
Isn't that
this is the only kind of tie I wear? Did you know?
It's my women's intuition.
Yeah.
And that same intuition tells me that when we come back, Bob will have a roundup of the weekend's televised sports.
It's your bad taste.
It's nice.
No way this guy's gonna beat me. Not today. My serve is booming.
Testing available quickly so people don't have to be anxious about getting that virus infection through blood transfusions.
Let me give you one more question, and very quickly. The modes of transmission have always been controversial and generally poorly understood by the public at large. Are there any new modes of transmissions that have been confirmed recently?
No, I think we're looking at sexual transmission and transmission by blood, and if we could control those, we could pat ourselves on the back.
Fine. Thank you so much for your time.
Happy to be here.
Hello, Dr. Volberding?
Yes, hello.
Yes, this is Marilyn McCain with Channel 4 in Kansas City.
Hello.
First off, what's the most valuable, promising research for AIDS that we're seeing in animals?
Well, I think the most promising research is there are several areas I think are really critical. One is our basic understanding of the virus, how the virus infects people, how it causes the immune breakdown after the infection occurs. And there we are looking at a number of viruses, especially in non-human primates, monkeys from Africa, that look very promising and are helping us understand the biology of the disease. The other important area involves the early testing of drugs so we can test them more efficiently in humans. We previously test them in animals to establish how much we can give and how we should give it.
And do you think the only way we're going to find a vaccine is through more and more research with the primates in particular?
Well, I think primates will be an important part of the equation of developing an AIDS vaccine. Humans will also. We will clearly, at some level, fairly quickly be conducting trials of the early vaccine candidates in humans. The issue will be not so much whether we can make a vaccine, but whether we can make one that works. And it will be easier to test that in an animal system than in a human system because of obvious ethical problems.
The Surgeon General yesterday had said that we may be on the threshold of an AIDS explosion in the heterosexual population. Do you agree? And if so, what signs are you seeing?
Well, I'm not sure that I would use the term explosion. I think a slow burn might be a better way of looking at it. We're going to see more and more cases of AIDS in heterosexuals. There's very little question about that. There will be factors which will limit the spread in the so-called general population. My guess would be that the next population that will be heavily affected by AIDS will be the urban youth, the kids living especially in the New York City area where there are a lot of heterosexuals already infected by IV drug use. They will have sexual contact with these young people and transmit the virus to them. That will happen. It's already happening.
I know the AMA is talking about public policy.
Right.
Based upon your experience in San Francisco, what should cities like Kansas City be doing to prepare now for this tremendous number of patients that we'll be seeing in the years to come?
Well, I think the thing that cities should do that are just starting to see the increase in AIDS is to look at cities like San Francisco for our experience. And what our experience would say is that you should be looking at aggressive public education, education that's coordinated with the communities that need to hear it first. You don't need to get to the typical heterosexual. You need to first get, I think, to gay men, people who use IV drugs. That's the message that I would carry to Kansas City, I think. Also looking at health care, making sure that you don't forget that people will get the disease.
Do you think that the FDA should allow AIDS patients to try more of these experimental drugs, or is that where the animals really come into play more than humans should?
Well, I think it's a complicated issue with respect to testing drugs in humans. We do test drugs in humans, and that has to accelerate. And the FDA has given every indication that they're going to accommodate themselves to the urgent need for testing these drugs in humans. I would say that there's not much point in what's going on with mixing one's own drugs and testing drugs without the controls that the medical centers can provide. We're not going to learn anything to stop the epidemic from somebody testing his own drug that he's made himself. We will learn by a rational approach, which I think can be accelerated.
Thank you very much, Dr. Volberding.
Sure.
When I can see him, can he see me? No.
Okay. Hello?
You talking to me?
Hello, is this Denver?
Yes.
Hi.
I can hear you.
Good.
I don't know if we're rolling yet or not. How many interviews have you done so far today?
I'm sorry?
How many interviews have you done so far today?
Oh, I don't know. 7 or
300 or
8 so
400?
far, I think.
Busy day for you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay? Can you keep talking to us? So we can set it
Yeah,
up
I can
level?
hear.
Okay, would you...
you just want me to keep talking?
Yes, please.
All right. I can usually
him
talk
there?
forever until somebody tells me to keep talking.
Yeah, we need you to keep talking.
You really do need me.
We're setting it up. Just give us a countdown or something.
Okay, this is Paul Valberding sitting in Chicago, where I think the weather is changing, and by the time we leave the studio, it will be raining and cold.
That's very good. Thank you
okay.
very much. We're ready to go.
Okay. Doctor, what are some of the new drugs that are being tested on animals for AIDS?
The new drugs that we're seeing developed are in a sense, offshoots of the only drug that's been shown to be effective, AZT. The next most promising drug that's being developed is called dideoxycytidine, or DDC. That's in testing now in animals. It's also in very early testing in humans at the National Institutes of Health.
How do you spell that?
DIDEOXYCITIDINE. It's not easy.
I know.
DDC is what we call it.
I think that's what I'm going to call it too. I know that some of the side effects of AZT are that some people go into convulsions, that it can lower their white blood count. Is that right? And that it can have some very serious side effects. Is this drug designed to answer some of those problems?
AZT is a drug, as you suggest, that does have side effects. The most common side effect by far is anemia. People become anemic because of AZT, and the white blood count also can drop. We don't think that's going to be as big a problem in healthier people taking the drug, and we're going to be testing that shortly. DDC is promising in the sense that in the laboratory, it is very potent at a lower concentration than even AZT, which is also quite potent. So there is the hope that we'll be able to find a drug, either AZT by using it in different doses, or DDC that is able to control the virus without causing some of the side effects that we've seen.
When you say healthier people, I know that in the initial AZT testing, they were only using those who had developed AIDS-related complex,
right?
Or the pneumonia that's associated with AIDS. So is AZT now going to be used on people that you go get a blood test, you find out that you're carrying the virus, you can get some AZT?
There are, in fact, trials that are being designed. I'm writing one today, in fact, that will hopefully address that population specifically, the people that are infected but who are still in absolutely normal health, to see whether or not by looking at different doses that we can develop a safe treatment with AZT that will keep people from going on to develop AIDS. That would be the most important thing I think we could do right now, at least if we could prolong that period to the development of AIDS, to give us a chance to learn more about the virus and learn more about other treatments.
Why was it not tested on those people initially?
The way drugs are developed is they're first obviously developed in the laboratory, then animals, which is one of the important things we want to talk about this week, is animals come into play to give us a sense of how toxic the drugs are likely to be in humans and what kind of dose range we're looking at. Are we looking at a very low dose, a high dose? Can the drug be given orally? Those are the things that an animal system really can only tell us. The next step then is to test a drug in sicker people, in case the drug turns out to be more toxic than we expect, and then finally to test it in healthier people where the risks of testing a drug are really higher if the drug proves not to be effective.
How will the DDC differ from AZT?
Well, DDC is now being tested in laboratory animals, looking again for toxicity, helping us decide how we can more safely and rapidly test it in humans. The goal is to accelerate drug testing in humans, realizing that we're in the middle of an epidemic. We don't have luxury of time. So DDC is in that phase now, and in a very small number of people are actually getting the drug in Bethesda, Maryland.
Are there any preliminary indications that it may be more effective than AZT?
No, the testing is really just beginning.
Where do we stand in terms of a vaccine, particularly in terms of animal testing?
Well, vaccines are not difficult to make. The tricky thing with vaccines is proving that they work or not. Here, the ideal experiment, if you would be to give a human a vaccine and then later inject some AIDS virus into the person. Now, we obviously can't do that in humans. I hope it's obvious. We can do it in a chimpanzee model, and we're looking for other non-human primate models of the AIDS virus infection where we can actually challenge the animal after we use the vaccine to prove whether or not the vaccine prevents the development of the infection. That's where we stand right now. There are some candidate vaccines that have been given to chimpanzees, have at least enough evidence in various systems to warrant early testing in humans. And we expect that process will accelerate over the next couple of years.
Within the next 1 or 2, you think?
Well, I think it will be much longer than that before we are able to say that we have the AIDS vaccine. I hope that it will be possible to make an AIDS vaccine. In the meantime, we're very concentrated on developing more effective drugs, and as the Surgeon General has been doing, working on developing more effective educational programs to keep people from getting infected in the first place. That would be a useful thing to have as well.
The animals that are being used, primarily rats, mice, monkeys?
Well, we are using a variety of animals depending on the question that's being asked. The question of how does the virus cause immune deficiency is often asked in animals that have similar viruses, which range from cats with the cat leukemia virus, which is in many senses similar to the AIDS virus, to primates, to monkeys that are infected with a virus that's almost indistinguishable from the AIDS virus. In the case of drug testing, the use of dogs and monkeys especially to see how much drug will be absorbed if we give it orally, for example. Can the drug be given orally, or do we have to give it as an injection? In the case of vaccine development, a variety of animals are used, including goats and rabbits to develop the early part of the vaccine, and then again primates, especially chimpanzees, when it comes to testing the potential vaccine.
Is any of this testing painful to the animal?
The use of animals in AIDS research is really mostly limited to giving various injections and drawing blood. Now, with some parts of testing, you need to assess whether or not a drug, for example, is getting to a specific organ. So animals are necessarily sacrificed as part of this work. On the other hand, the work again is absolutely critical. I think we all agree with that for the public health of the country, and the use of animals is governed closely by laws and by our own concern for the animal's welfare.
Why is that important? Why is the condition of the animal important?
Well, it makes perfect sense if you stop and think that a researcher using an animal, first of all, wouldn't do it if a cell culture could do the same job. It's much easier, cheaper, and quicker to use a cell culture, and they're used whenever possible. So when we decide to use an animal, it's carefully considered, and we're concerned about the quality of our work, and we want to make sure that if we're saying something works or doesn't work, that it's not because the animal wasn't well cared for. So there's everyone's incentive is in the same direction, which is to provide the best possible care for the animals when their use is really required for this research.
There's an awful lot of AIDS research going on in a lot of different facilities. Are animals sacrificed unnecessarily through duplicative research?
It's the question of duplication of research has been raised many times, and I think it doesn't make sense. There is an incentive in science to develop new approaches, so there is no scientist, no reputable scientist would intentionally duplicate work that had been done before. What he or she might do would be to use a similar approach to amplify and confirm a previous observation, and that's especially critical if the previous observation was a very important one. You want to make sure that the fund of knowledge is secure before you build upon it, and to that extent it might look like duplication in some cases, but really what we're seeing is an amplification of previous knowledge, an extension into new areas.
What do you think is the most important thing for the public to know about the use of animals in AIDS research?
I think it's critical that the public understand that animals are absolutely critical to our continued effort against AIDS, from the basic biology of the virus to developing drugs and vaccines. It will be important in the foreseeable future to have animals available, and we need to educate the public that it is an emotional issue on the surface, but it's a rational issue underneath that, and that's what we're trying to convey.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
If I have any trouble hearing you, I'm in a not so quiet room, so I will probably, if I have to repeat a question, if I don't hear you, I'll let you know.
Okay, and we're taping, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Are you ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess the first question is, I don't really have too much information on your address to the convention today on the animal testing. Why don't you give me a little background on that?
The convention that I'm in Chicago for is the first major AIDS convention organized by the AMA addressing public policy in AIDS. My topic there is more systems of care for patients, how we can organize the care for the thousands of patients that we expect to see in the next 5 years. I'm also here today talking on behalf of the need that we all have as AIDS researchers for animals in this research process. So the two separate issues, really.
Well, let me then ask you about the animals. There is much controversy about this, and of course we had the fire at
Right.
UC Davis. What is the argument for it then?
Well, the argument for the use of animals in medical research, including AIDS, is that there is no shortcut to this work. We use cell cultures whenever we can. We use humans as experimental subjects whenever it's absolutely necessary. But there are situations where there is no alternative to the use of animals in research. And with AIDS, animals are critical for our understanding of the virus, as well as for developing effective drugs and vaccines.
Those kind of arguments sound good, but do you think you will ever satisfy the animal rights people who feel that this is cruel?
Well, I hope I could convince them that what we're doing isn't cruel, but is in the interest of stopping this epidemic. We're in the midst worldwide of a rapid spread of the AIDS virus, and the only real hope we have is developing effective drugs and vaccines. There is no shortcut. We would love there to be one, and we don't use animals when they're not absolutely needed, but they are needed, and that's the message that I'd hope we could get across, if not to the fringe elements, at least to the people who are able to hear what we're saying.
A couple of questions on the drugs, if you can answer them. If you can't, I understand. The AZT drug is very expensive, and in LA there are rumors that the cost will go up again. How
how do you, as a health professional dealing with this problem, feel about the high cost? I mean, some say it can't be defended when it's otherwise a death sentence for those who can't afford it.
Well, it's a terrible situation that we're in. We have finally a drug, and I think the first thing we should be is grateful that the research has gone as fast as it has to allow us to have a drug so quickly after the AIDS virus was first identified. On the other hand, the drug that we have is very expensive, and it's causing all of us in San Francisco and Los Angeles, I'm sure, to ask, who's going to pay for the drug, especially who's going to pay for the drug for those people who don't qualify for Medi-Cal, don't have a source of insurance that can pay for the drug. And I would hope that some of the discussion will prod us to rethinking who pays for expensive medical problems of all sorts. It's not fair that people can't get a potentially life-saving drug, and we're on the patient's side on this, I think.
Has there been any suggestion as to who would pay for it? We have about 250 AIDS patients that will fall between those cracks of no Medi-Cal and no private insurance.
Well, I think the first thing is to make sure that we're trying everything possible to make sure that we look at the ability of the people to pay for the drug. There are going to be some people who can't afford it, and we should try to find them sources of reimbursement, which might in some cases mean getting them enrolled on Medi-Cal. Now that might help that person. It might end up shifting more of the responsibility then to the state. And then the next question will be, how long can the state of California keep bearing this burden? And quickly we realize, I think, that it's a national problem we're talking about. It's not a local problem.
So it then becomes a federal problem.
Excuse me for a minute.
Okay, that's all right. I understand those things fall out all the time. Okay. So what you're talking about then is something that the federal government needs to address as far as funding these people.
Absolutely. This is a national problem, and ranging from the cost of research to the paying of patient care. It's a national problem.
Ribavirin, rejected last week by the FDA. There's in some articles I read, maybe that the FDA wasn't too happy with the company, which is a California company, obviously, down here in Orange County.
Right.
Was that a mistake by the FDA or prudent?
Well, I didn't see the material that the FDA reviewed, so I can't comment on their review process. I know that the FDA is very sensitive to the AIDS issue. They are determined to make any drug that looks promising available. So I would have to assume that the FDA reviewed the merits of the drug on the basis of the data they had, and decided on the basis of the data that it wasn't proven that the drug was useful. And I would hope that we can move quickly on to developing and testing drugs that might be more promising.
There was another article in our paper yesterday that talked about how many AIDS patients are trying home remedies now. They're so desperate for whatever possible cure, or no cure obviously, but whatever will prolong life. Is that dangerous, or are there any cures that they could come up with at home that might help?
No, I think there are no cures. There are no treatments. There are no cures anyway,
right.
Period. Whether at home or in the doctor's office, there are treatments, and AZT is the only drug that's been proven to have some effect, and that's what we have. The other drugs that are available should be used under carefully controlled research applications, so we can quickly answer the question. We're not going to answer the question whether AL-721 works or doesn't work by people taking it on their own. We'll learn by doing carefully conducted clinical trials. There is the understandable desire for people to have an immediate non-toxic cure for an epidemic as bad as this one, but it's not realistic. And again, when we talk about the use of animals, as we are this week in particular, it's because we want to keep people aware that progress is being made, but there are some threats to its continued movement. And that's what we're eager to see communicated to the public.
One technical question: how long can AZT prolong the life of a patient with that pneumocystis?
We don't fully know how long the lifespan of somebody with AIDS will be prolonged with AZT. We do believe that it will be prolonged, but the drug has been given to large numbers of people now just for over a year. So until we can, and that's about how long we would expect people to live even without a drug. So until we can continue to follow that group for a longer period of time, we won't really be able to answer the question directly. I would say that after a year's treatment, only between 10 and 15% of that group had died, which is much less than we would have expected without that treatment.
Even considering the side effects, I understand that they can be quite severe, the anemia and that sort of thing. One last question on the animal rights thing. How many projects or how many research projects are underway? I guess how many animals are involved in this? Or
well, there are
not a head count exactly, but I would assume that there are major projects underway all over the country.
There are major projects that involve animal experimentation. In particular, right now, I think that they fall into the broad areas of learning more about the virus. That involves looking at animals that are infected with similar viruses, like the cat leukemia virus, on up into the use of animals to test promising new drugs. For example, DDC is another drug that's being developed and being tested for toxicity in animals. And very importantly, learning more about potential vaccines.
When we hear your side of it, it sounds like obviously there really can't be a question, and then you'll hear the animal rights people cite examples where they feel that the treatment or the test is inhumane. I don't suppose we'll ever really settle this.
Well, I think the key thing there is that certainly no one is arguing for inhumane treatment of animals, and it's not to anyone's interest to have any other than the best available care for animals used in experimentation. It's also not in our interest to use animals unnecessarily because they're expensive and much more difficult to work with than some cell culture systems in the laboratory. So they're used when they're necessary. They're used in the best possible circumstances to make sure that the results of the experiment is valid. So I think we're really, our efforts are in a similar direction, but we would like to certainly see them continued to be available.
All right, sir. I certainly thank you very much.
Sure.
And is this your last interview?
A few more.
Oh, a few more. Well, you're really warmed up and ready to go now.
All right.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.